Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Farnham Jahani. I'm president of Carnegie Mellon University. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I know we have a number of also attendees who are joining us virtually. I want to welcome all of you to the annual symposium of the Southwest Pennsylvania New Economy Collaborative. On behalf of the board of directors, we're thrilled you have been able to join us this afternoon to celebrate the progress that members of our community have made in advancing a next generation economy in the Pittsburgh region. Before I get started, I want to thank and acknowledge my co-chair, Stephanie Pashman, CEO of the Allegheny Conference, for her partnership and her leadership in leading this effort and this collaboration. And you're going to hear from Stephanie a little bit later in the program. Also, many thanks. A number of you are here, our fellow New Economy Collaborative board members. A number of the project leads are here. A number of the members who are contributing to these projects are here. Of course, Ben Pratt, who's the Regional Economic Competitiveness Officer. I want to thank him for his work. You're going to hear from Ben in just a moment. I would also like to acknowledge we have several of our partners from the federal government, from Senator Casey's office, also partners from the Department of Commerce that are here in person. I want to acknowledge all of you, our regional leaders, our foundation leaders, our academic leaders and industry leaders and various stakeholders for your support for all that you have done. You represent Pittsburgh's remarkable alignment of support and commitment from both the public and the private sectors, and of course the foundation community. Thank you all for your support. As I'll highlight it in a moment, this would not be possible without the kind of alignment of public and private support that we have in our region. I do want to start my brief remarks by taking you back just over a year ago to the Build Back Better press conference when President Biden and Department of Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo announced Pittsburgh region would receive $62.7 million grant. In fact, they had decided, although there were a number of other awardees, they decided to highlight Pittsburgh and Detroit as two areas that they wanted to highlight during the press conference. When President Biden and Secretary Raimondo described our region during the press conference, they weren't just talking about advanced manufacturing, robotics, AI, and technology, stuff that I love to talk about. Actually, they highlighted something that's much more compelling. They describe our coalition's ability to harness the power of innovation to catalyze economic development, and also to use partnership to broaden and amplify the impact of our tech ecosystem. You're going to hear much more about that today. President Biden, in fact, focused on our overarching ambition to build bridges to the economy of the future so that it is within reach of everyone in our region, and to establish a model for economic rebirth and workforce training that other regions in our nation can follow. The Biden administration, of course, recognized that our coalition, this coalition, and our history of collaboration could bring this bold, ambitious proposal to life. Tonight, you'll have a chance to hear how our coalition's tremendous progress is catalyzing new opportunities. I was going to give you a couple of updates about what's going on, but Ben's going to do a lot more of that, and you're going to hear from the team members. We started a couple of minutes late, so in the interest of time, I'm just going to tell you that. I remind you there are 5 projects in our collaborative: SME robotic expansion, the robotics manufacturing hub, expanded pathway to new economy careers, applied robotics startup factory, expanded pathway to entrepreneurship. And again, thanks to the project leads as well as the team members. The thing that I want to leave you with before I turn it over to Ben is that these are not 5 disparate sort of activities. In fact, one of the things that the Department of Commerce noticed was, first of all, how inclusive our proposal was from this region. Not only included the urban area, the Pittsburgh area, but also included many of the rural counties around our city, which was extremely important to the administration. And the second thing is that these 5 sort of broad areas that we're addressing there's a connection among them, and you'll begin to see how these different thrust areas are connected and how innovation and how the hubs that we're creating is aligned with workforce development and so on. And this is all really nicely coming together. We've made a ton of progress. Again, credit to the teams. We still have a lot of work ahead of us. In order for our work to have a transformative impact on our region, we must stick to the audacious commitments and resilient partnerships that allowed us to win the grant in the first place. It's no secret that the scope of the collaboration is unprecedented. It's driven by one of the most diverse coalitions, as I said, in the history of this region. But we must also continue to bring in more leaders and groups to carry this forward. And sustainability of this effort, of course, is paramount to the long-term success of it. You, everyone in this room, and those of you who are not able to join us, can make this happen. You can help this region stand out once again as a model of reinvention and partnership. We strongly encourage you to get involved, talk with project leads during the reception, of course, talk to Ben this evening and ask how you can actually participate in this. At this point, it's my pleasure to introduce Ben Pratt, our Regional Economic Development Officer. I'm going to embarrass Ben by telling you that he has been an amazing force in leading the effort for us, and he's going to provide you his progress report and overall goals before we turn it over to team members. His impact on implementation efforts over the past 12 months, as Stephanie would agree, is undeniable. Through his guidance and management, he's enabling the success of our 5 projects and helping impact our region. He's from this area, so we know why he's so committed. Anyway, thank you for your leadership, Ben. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ben. Please join me in welcoming Ben to the podium.
Thank you, Dr. Jahanian, and good evening, everyone. My name is Ben Pratt, and it's truly a pleasure to be with you all here today. In March of this year, I was able to return home to the greater Pittsburgh region to take on this exciting role of Regional Economic Competitiveness Officer for the Southwestern Pennsylvania New Economy Collaborative. When you have to pause and take a breath in the middle of the title, you know that it's extra special. After graduating during the Great Recession, I left the region. Like many of my peers, I had to in pursuit of work. Back then, I was frustrated that I had to leave my hometown to get a job. Now I'm incredibly grateful for the knowledge and the opportunities afforded me and my family, as I was able to help develop and advance some of the most innovative and impactful economic development strategies across the nation. Some in fast-growing, large metro areas like Denver, Colorado, and others in small communities that are transforming right before our eyes, like Erie, Pennsylvania. As you can imagine, the strategies were different. The systems we used were different, and frankly, the stakes were different. But what they all had in common, in my opinion, was that the most significant programs that had the greatest impact all started with a strong, united coalition led by dynamic, results-oriented, and visionary public-private partnerships. The Southwest Pennsylvania New Economy Collaborative is no exception to that rule. So thank you again to Dr. Jahanian and to Stephanie Pashman, our co-chairs of the New Economy Collaborative. Thank you to the governing board listed here, our members who are supporting this work to date. You are true visionaries, and I applaud the collective effort to drive such impact. It's an exciting time to be part of this community as the greater Pittsburgh region continues to emerge as a leader in the robotics, autonomy, and artificial intelligence industry cluster. Over the past year, we've made tremendous strides in delivering on our coalition's goal of transforming this region through advancing this industry. We have an unprecedented investment, as mentioned by Dr. Jahanian, the federal government's Build Back Better Regional Challenge Grant of $62.7 million. But it's also important to mention the $15 million worth of local match. So in total, we're activating $78 million to put together a bold vision for our future to supercharge our already globally recognized robotics and autonomy cluster and ensure that the economic benefits are shared equitably and reach individuals from all corners of the region. As a coalition of partner organizations, we set out to eliminate barriers of risks of adopting and integrating these technologies for our existing small and medium-sized enterprises across our communities. We are creating the next generation of entrepreneurial ecosystems by designed to leverage our critical strengths within the cluster already through the launch of a robotics factory in Lawrenceville, new incubators and fellowship programming, and 4 separate innovation accelerator locations throughout our 11-county region. Finally, what is arguably one of our greatest undertakings is our mission to create and to expand some of the most sophisticated, state-of-the-art workforce training programs that build pathways to our new economy's careers. That work that will ensure that we no longer need to leave our hometowns in pursuit of work. And this is just the beginning. Today, you will learn about some of the progress we've made to date, some of the goals that we have in the years ahead. Most importantly, you will learn how to get involved. Most of this is captured in the annual reports you may have grabbed on your way in, and for those of you joining us online, it's available on our website. Please visit it. And while you're there, I encourage you to take a look at the comprehensive dashboards we've developed to track not only the growth of the cluster, the impact of these programs on a quarter-by-quarter basis, but also provide ways for you to share ideas and how you can how we can do better to advance our work. I invite each of you to continue to engage with each of these programs, to embrace the opportunities they bring, and to contribute to the discussions that we're having here today. They will shape our community's future, and together we will build a greater Pittsburgh that is not only better, but more brighter, bolder, and more resilient. Now, before I introduce our panelists and invite them to join me on stage, I'd like to take a moment to recognize many hands that made this event and frankly, much of the work that we do possible. First, thank you, Emily Davis, our communications project manager, the Allegheny Conference, for the depth of support you all provide us on a daily basis, especially Kristen Turner and tonight. Thank you to Jen Apicella, Kate Caffrey, Ryan O'Shea, and Jenny Sharp, and the rest of the Pittsburgh Robotics Network for helping us coordinate this event while preparing for what will be an incredible day tomorrow. More to come on that. It's a privilege to work with such professionals that show up every day and deliver time and time again. So thank you all. Now, allow me to introduce you to our panelists. Matthew Holgis is Managing Director of Business Development for Catalyst Connection. Catalyst Connection's Digital Bridge initiative helps manufacturers with implementation of Industry 4.0 technologies in products, processes, logistics, and human resources. Tasha Miller is the Program Manager for Technology Development at the Advanced Robotics for Manufacturing Institute, ARM. ARM is de-risking the adoption of advanced robotics and automation technology with subject matter experts at the Robotics Manufacturing Hub, and accelerating the commercialization of robotics through the build-out of the regional innovation accelerators. Jen Lasser is the Director of Workforce and Economic Development for the Southwest Pennsylvania Commission. She coordinates the effort that will expand training and placement opportunities through partnerships between educational institutions, labor, and industry to build out a vibrant robotics and autonomy career ecosystem. Kevin Dowling is Managing Director of the Robotics Factory. The Robotics Factory and its array of programs will create, accelerate, and grow robotics startups in the greater Pittsburgh region. Corey Turner, the Executive Director of the Expanded Pathways to Entrepreneurship at Carnegie Mellon University, will be representing 2 programs designed to increase pathways to robotics and autonomy industries for underrepresented populations and to help launch new minority and women-owned businesses that can support our regional economy. The Peer Fellowship Program and the Training for Market Access for Entrepreneurs. And finally, our moderator, Jen Apicella, is the Executive Director of the Pittsburgh Robotics Network, which is dedicated to the growth and promotion of Pittsburgh's world-renowned robotics business cluster. Jen, with that, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Ben. All right, let's dig into this work. So engagement is key, and in order to engage, it's important that the public and that others better understand what those pathways are, what the projects are, and what are the ways to engage. So that's going to be the focus of today's panel discussion. We're going to touch on 3 key areas for these projects: adoption, commercialization, and workforce. So with that, let's start with adoption. So Matt, Catalyst Connection created the Digital Bridge Initiative, which coordinates the leadership engagement of our small and medium-sized advanced manufacturers. Can you share a little bit about that program and what it does?
Sure. A little bit of background first on Catalyst Connection. We are the local MEP, and we serve manufacturers here in the 11 counties, actually 12 counties of Southwestern Pennsylvania. There's about 2,700 to 2,800 manufacturers in the region, and we help them focus on product, process, people, and technology. And that's where Digital Bridge comes in. We engage the community, about 300 manufacturers a year, and help them focus on these areas. And when it comes to technology, is better understanding it, how it can be leveraged to support their manufacturing process. And in the instance of Digital Bridge, we can actually bring grants to the table to help support some of the soft costs associated with the implementation of these technologies. We also held a series of roundtables that was important to kind of get a feeling for the marketplace on where they stood on the challenges in and around technology integration, Industry 4.0 integration.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, that's very important. Now, when you hosted those roundtables, discussing those, various barriers of adopting robotics and automation, informing the development of supportive services, what were some of the biggest takeaways from those focus groups and your ongoing efforts, and how does it align with these program offerings?
Well, there were 3 primary areas where there were challenges or obstacles for the manufacturers. Number one was workforce readiness, and that's not just skills readiness. It's sometimes it's cultural readiness. I mean, many times you're changing the way people do their job, and you have to make sure that the individual contributors on that team have some input into the overall process. The other aspect to it was access to capital. Although we are providing access to these small mini grants, $25,000 or $10,000, that's only for the soft aspects or the soft costs associated with these projects. When you think about the investment levels for both software and hardware, it can be very expensive for these companies. And I guess the economic uncertainty causes companies, or gives them cause for pause when it relates to that. And then lastly, it's really knowing where to start. I mean, how do you de-risk this process? Industry 4.0 is more than just a buzzword for these manufacturers. They want to be a manufacturer of the 21st century. They often don't know where to start. And that's an opportunity where we bring in some of the other partners to help them navigate that entire process.
Yeah, that's that modernization mapping.
Yep.
Is such an important thing. If you don't know where to start, you can't start.
Exactly right.
So, and that's definitely one of the keys to adoption. You brought up some really good points, I think, that relate to transitioning from adoption and even into touching on commercialization, which is around sort of the risk factor, right? How to maybe de-risk some of this for the manufacturing community. Now, I know Tasha with the programs at ARM. So what are you seeing in your work with manufacturers around this sort of risk factor that they have to deal with?
Yeah, so risk is sort of a matter of perception and kind of the environment, and each manufacturer has different risks. We've seen all kinds of things from companies that want to reduce their costs, companies that want to be more efficient, faster, companies that aren't sure how to integrate the robotics with their workforce, companies that have never had a robot before and aren't even sure where to start. So our goal is to bring engineering resources to those risk areas. So everything from engineering analysis to modeling and simulation to proof of concept work with our robotic cells that we're going to talk about in a second.
That's great. And that's part of the robotics manufacturing hub that's in Mill 19. Is that right?
Yep, we are located in Hazelwood Green, so that's where ARM is headquartered at. We've got 4 de-risking cells. So 2 of them are online already. So we've got collaborative robots that can tackle problems such as assembly, disassembly, small material handling, machine tending, and then we've also got inspection. And then 2 more cells are slated to come online in early 2024. So we'll be doing robotic welding as well as sanding and grinding.
That's great. That's really helpful. That's impactful stuff to get over that hump. Now, so beyond the robotics manufacturing hub, I know also some engagements that you have with manufacturers and even the community are around these innovation accelerators that you all have. So if you could help us understand a little bit more about what the innovation accelerators are, where they're located and what they do and how that's a little different or similar than what the hub does.
Yeah, so the innovation accelerators are the extension of the manufacturing hub out into the 11 county region. So they're really the reach out into the rural areas. We've got an innovation accelerator at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, so IUP. We've got one at Community College of Allegheny County down by the airport, Westmoreland County Community College out near New Stanton, Pennsylvania, and then Penn State Digital Foundry in New Kensington. And so they're open. They're offering different programs and workshops for anything from intro to robotic programming, how to do CNC machining, entrepreneurship. And then they also have makerspace areas. So places where different people can go in and kind of get started. And so they're open to everyone. It's not just entrepreneurs. It's existing manufacturers, students, people with an idea, people looking to learn new skills.
Fantastic. That's great. And that's so important, right? That engagement piece that we keep talking about. All these programs are only valuable if they're being engaged with. So phenomenal. So I think that's a really great segue into, because it touches on, adoption, getting over that hump, and then how to maybe start inspiring commercialization from these things. So when we think about commercialization, innovation is key. And that's something our region is just an absolute powerhouse in, innovation. But accelerating that innovation in a strategic way with the right resources is important. And that's really a central focus for Innovation Works. So the Pittsburgh Robotics Network is actually very proud to call Innovation Works Robotics Factory location at the RIDC Tech Forge in Lawrenceville our new home. And so we have moved in and we are really fully immersed in some of the most exciting innovations taking place when it comes to robotics and autonomy with the Robotics Factory program. Now, Kevin, you run the Robotics Factory 3-stage accelerator program, but you also have some experience personally and professionally in terms of being a founder as well as working with robotics startups. How is a robotics startup unique from other startups?
So I guess in general, I'd characterize the startup mentality, especially in software, as being really focused on delivering sort of an intangible product software. When you start to get into hardware and then robotics, which I would consider to be a subset of hardware in general, but robotics has a need for really extraordinary things. In our cohort accelerator right now, we have a company that you will see out on the floor tomorrow. You'll have a chance to hear them in the afternoon. That is doing underwater robotics for mapping purposes. Now that requires water, requires a tank, or right now they're using a quarry north of Pittsburgh. We're very fortunate in Pittsburgh to have a wide variety of environments for testing, but testing environments is critical to the ability of these companies to make sure that their products are working and test them without traveling some distance or outside of a large city. I would also say that very often laboratories for building, high bays for assembling and testing to some extent in those same facilities. We have all of the above at Tech Forge at the Robotics Factory. So the facility in Lawrenceville has been ideal for our ability to build these robots, to test these robots and develop these robots. So all of that goes into that. If you look at what distinguishes robotics companies additionally from hardware and software companies, I would say some of the discipline around it. Growing up in the labs at CMU, we basically were creating those spaces and the ability to do that. And we did that by, there's many interesting stories around this, but we tested as much as we could on site. We traveled to Antarctica to Chile to many places around the world where those environments were similar to the eventual domain that that robot was intended for, let's say the planet Mars, for example. And so we had a lot of those capabilities right here in Pittsburgh, the slag dumps from the steel mills, which some still exist to some extent. Underwater things, as I mentioned earlier, large isolated terrains. And so we've been able to do quite a bit. I would also add one more thing. It's sort of interesting about Pittsburgh. It's the best place to test autonomous vehicles, right? It is by far. You have streets made of cobblestones, asphalt, wood. There's a wooden street in Shadyside. There are a wide variety of terrains, roads without markings, without shoulders. It's the toughest testing ground in the world, I believe. So I think that makes it good. I think that makes Pittsburgh really good for that.
Yeah, that's true. And you bring up a good point that there are some specialized needs. So what type of these specific strategic support resources that you provide early stage robotics companies? What types are provided through the robotics factory?
So we have within the overall robotics factory, we have three components. One is called Create, there's Accelerate, which is probably obvious as to what it does, but also a program called Scale. Create is about, and I think this is unique to the region or maybe the world, is the idea of bringing industry sectors together. And I credit Bob Straczynski at IW and Parag Batavia for having put that together. The idea of pulling an industry sector together, ask them what their greatest challenges are. And so we did this last April with one industry called aviation, pretty big industry worldwide. And many of the problems are the same throughout the world. So if you look at aviation and you ask them, what are the big problems? They might say baggage handling. And that's something many of us can relate to who travel quite a bit. Also automating things like water and waste materials off of airplanes and then back on, chalking of wheels. There's a wide variety of problems that they're facing that are amenable to robotics and automation. So in convening a almost 3-day workshop around that and asking them what those problems are, laying them out, sort of discussing. Actually, there were some heated discussions too about what were problems and what weren't, but it was good to learn about that domain because we're not aviation experts, but we were able to learn from the best people who run airports around the world. And so we took that, and today, as a result of that April summit, we have several companies in the region right now building and testing products to handle baggage handling, wastewater management, and so forth for these systems. And there will be more. There's probably going to be an interesting couple of announcements in the not too distant future. I'd say the other aspect of robotics that maybe I should have mentioned in the previous question, it's all about the integration of technologies, it's developing systems. So none of these things are in isolation. When you see a robot on the floor here at the convention center tomorrow, look at it. It comprises mechanics, electronics, firmware, software, optics. There's a wide variety of fields that go into the creation of these systems. And systems thinking is sometimes hard to find. It's not until you actually start building these systems that you realize the complexities involved of synchronization of disparate components, of being able to make them work together more effectively than they can individually. And that's something that you can only get through experience. And you also bear the scars of doing it.
That's great. No, and these are nuances that when you're, I think, on the other side of things, these are important resources that can help you get from here to there. So that's great. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that we've been talking a lot about technology and innovation and the use of technology. But at the end of the day, these projects are run by people. The people are behind all of this. And so it's really important to have the right people and more people being able to share in this wealth of opportunity for these projects, but also in these industry areas. And so Corey, I know that the Promoting Emerging Entrepreneurs in Robotics Fellowship Program, also known as the PURE Fellowship Program, that's a 9.5-month fellowship program that's designed to provide innovative entrepreneurs who specialize in robotics and automation with the resources they need to advance their ideas and solutions and sort of get into these companies and make their mark. So yeah, there were some pretty incredible partners that helped build this program. Could you maybe share with us that process and the organizations involved and what that program is?
Absolutely. This was a very unique experience for me, and I feel very lucky to have been a part of the design process and now the implementation process. So our project is led by Innovate PGH. So I know Sean's in the room and Aaron and Mark. So they did a wonderful job of pulling together a talented group of program designers and facilitators that I've been lucky to work with throughout this process. So Allison Falk and April Jackson from Women in Tech PGH, or WIT, and also Lee Solomon Pugliano from the Equity Impact Center, or EIC. They're in the back over there. So I'd love to share a bit more about those organizations, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the process. So WIT is a local grassroots nonprofit, which was founded by Allison in 2017 with the mission to redefine tech workforce development strategies with a human-centered approach. So since then, they have become a central hub for women in the Pittsburgh area, and they continue to foster community through elevated networking experiences, unique exploratory programming, and user-centered upskilling cohorts. The Equity Impact Center is home to many innovative and impactful programs, such as the Scale Fellowship and the Full Circle Nonprofit Accelerator Program. The organization utilizes proven frameworks for equity-centered program design, and they offer a membership to organizations seeking support to design their own and implement their own equity-centered strategic initiatives. If you aren't familiar with these organizations, please take time during the reception and tomorrow to network with them. I personally have benefited from each of them, and I can't say enough good things about their contributions. So I mentioned our process was unique. In some ways, we tried to recreate the experience we wanted the fellows to have within the design process. So we spent time to establish guiding principles, which would give us a framework to operate under. We talked a lot about the why behind our goals and objectives to make sure we were keeping equity and inclusion at the heart of the program and the center of the design. And it all sounds really wonderful, but I do want to say it was not without its bumps in the road. And I think a lot of times people get a little scared by equity work that if you can't do it perfectly, you shouldn't do it at all. And I want to say that, finding the right partners, we're trying to change things, we're trying to change systems and structures and the way that people work. And shockingly, people don't like change. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be uncomfortable at times, but I would say the end result, even where we are now, is so worth it and has been so worth it. And we're really proud of what we have and can't wait to see how it evolves.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, that's really great. So now you've already awarded this fellowship. So when is the next one?
So right now we have 5 amazing fellows. I can't say enough good things about them either. So our next cohort will start in August 2024, but we are beginning to recruit right now. So we'll be on the floor tomorrow at the Innovate booth. So please come see us. You can also find out more at peerfellowship.com, and the applications will open in January. We'll also have fellows floating around, maybe at the reception, maybe tomorrow. So talk to them about their experience and get to know a little bit more.
Fantastic. Yeah. Broadening access to these programs and resources is so important. So, and it's even more so when it comes to education and training for maintaining and operating these newly adopted autonomous machines in the workplace. So this is opening up an entirely new opportunity for people of all backgrounds to be able to consider jobs that didn't really even exist 5 to 10 years ago, maybe. So yeah, these are great opportunities. So, so Jen, speaking of people and the workforce and the importance of that, the work of expanding pathways, career pathways into these new economy careers is the largest non-infrastructure related EDA funded program in the nation. So can you help us understand, how is the region's workforce going to be prepared to acquire these skills to work with these new technologies, especially as adoption and de-risking helps accelerate the adoption as well?
Sure. As you mentioned, it is a large grant. So $24 million. We have 18 subawards. So very robust, and we're creating a highly coordinated system. And so some of our partners are workforce investment boards, colleges, universities, industry intermediaries, labor, pre-apprenticeship providers. And again, the goal of all this is to put together a system that includes everything from classes, work-based training, upskilling opportunities, incumbent worker training, curriculum review, train the trainer. So when building a complete and utter workforce ecosystem, you kind of have to have all of these parts working together. And so what we're ultimately hoping to do is train thousands of individuals into robotics related careers and truly offer an opportunity. So, with EDA, one of their key priorities is with equity. And so that is a huge portion of this grant as well, is equity and opportunity, and making sure that individuals in this area have access to training and, more importantly, family sustaining wages. And so because this grant can't be one size fits all, we have a really robust network here that's going to create all the different classes and training that will allow for folks to quickly get trained, be employed, and this will allow for our local employers to have a very filled talent pool, and we're able to adapt quickly to those changes in technology. So being flexible and being adaptable is really, really important here. And so we're having a lot of conversations with our employers to find out what those needs are going to be, and training individuals and putting them to work pretty quickly. We've already trained quite a few folks so far. I see a lot of our partners in this room. I can't thank you enough. But basically, getting to the point that Ben made is how to connect. So please visit our website that we have for this grant as a whole. We're one of 5, but we're all working together to truly make this a robust ecosystem. But all of our training opportunities are featured on the website, how to connect, but I'll also be here to talk to anybody who might be interested.
Yeah, that's great. So a good takeaway here, the good news is that you don't need a PhD to work in robotics and automation anymore. There are a lot more opportunities. And I think that these not that PhDs aren't great and still needed in a part of this work, but the opportunity has become expanded, and it's transformation is such a key thing going on in our region right now across so many different areas. And so seeing these jobs become transformed, manufacturers become transformed, robotic startups and innovation become transformed, and then people, transforming their lives through these opportunities. It's very inspiring and exciting to see. So do you think our workforce system is ready to, adapt to these new programs, and how are our workforce boards supporting the efforts?
Sure. With this being a really robust, interconnected group of partners, we have an opportunity to really impact change here, and more importantly, remove barriers to employment and education. And something that we see, especially when you have an equity focus and an opportunity focus, is everything from challenges in transportation, challenges in terms of cost of education. Let's see here. Am I missing? So education, childcare, transportation. And so all of these folks are working together to help remove and mitigate some of these barriers. And one of the things, our workforce investment boards are amazing here in Southwestern Pennsylvania. And they created a workforce committee to kind of talk about how they can align their policies and processes and streamline the ability to quickly receive training. And so something they did was exactly that. They aligned all of their training and process policies, which may seem very commonsensical, but it's not something that happens all the time. And it's revolutionary in that if you are coming from Butler, Allegheny, Fayette, Greene, etc., you have the exact same process to training that you may not have had before. And so again, very, very easily accessible. And I think that's something that we're working hard, is that if somebody wants to get into this field, they have access and ability to do so. We also have our university partners, our community colleges have formed industry committees. Those industry committees are meeting and talking about what their needs are and how they can access training. We have our local universities have set aside scholarships for access into the various types of trainings. And I hope what you're kind of hearing, not through just this conversation, but all of them, is that it's about cohesion, it's about collaboration, it's about conversation, and it's about truly making this field accessible for people to kind of work for.
Yes, and so I think that's a great transition moment here to sort of wrap things up here with the panel, and just understand all these things that we're talking about when we talk about engagement tomorrow. So Thursday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. here at the Convention Center, Pittsburgh Robotics Discovery Day is going to be the container to get access to all these resources. We will have over 130 organizations, many of which I would say are touching on, if not almost all of them are touching on these key tenets that we spoke about today. So we'll have robots there, in our robotics zone, featuring the innovation and the technology piece, advanced manufacturing in the manufacturing zone, seeing some of the adoption that's occurring and seeing some of these techniques firsthand. The career pathways zone, so individuals and people can explore what different new pathways might be available to them. And of course, the community zone to have more equitable and inclusive opportunities and resources from all different backgrounds for all different types of people. So this will be very exciting, and it's here to engage in. So we encourage active involvement, engagement. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this panel. I'd like to now introduce Stephanie Pashman to make some final remarks. And so she's the CEO of Allegheny Conference and Community Development and the co-chair of the Collaborative's Governing Board. Stephanie?
Thank you, Jen and panelists. What a wonderful, inspirational conversation. Before I make my remarks, I want to acknowledge our county executive-elect, Sarah Namarato, who I know walked in. I don't see you. There she is. Sarah, I am personally thrilled to work with you in your newly elected capacity, but most importantly, I think what you heard today is your vision for an inclusive economy for all is very much, I think, central to the vision of the work we did here, Build to Build Back Better opportunity. And so I wanted to just kind of put a finer point on many of the themes you heard today and reflect on, I think, what has been such a significant accomplishment when 2 years ago, a few of us, Farnham and I, and a couple others sat in a room and said, wow, there's some cool money we can go after. What would that look like for Pittsburgh? And look what it looks like, right? We have an accelerator that's live and supporting businesses. We have a fellowship program supporting non-traditional entrepreneurs. We have innovation incubator spaces around our broader region. And we have companies ripe for adoption looking to support technologies, all anchored by an ecosystem building organization in the Pittsburgh Robotics Network and an entire framework for training the future of our employment in this important sector. So there are multiple themes that I think we kind of want to bear out. Number one, and most importantly, I think as a proud Pittsburgher, this is what happens when we do collaboration, right? When public sector, private sector, business, labor, others come together, this is what it looks like. We can make this happen. Number two, this is what happens when we understand regionalism, right? When we can take the innovation that's happening in the cities and in the urban core and the technologists that are coming right out of Carnegie Mellon and our other universities and help them deploy their ideas throughout into our small and medium-sized enterprises throughout the broader region to help those SMEs and manufacturing transform. This is what happens when we invest in our own organizations, right? So we didn't go out and create lots of new organizations. We took those that are already anchored here, that are doing the work here, from Catalyst Connection to Innovate PGH to Innovation Works. These are organizations at the SBC who actually are in our backyard and arm and said, we already know what you can do. Here's what we can do together and do more. This is also what happens when we really put equity front and center. When we make sure that people, for equity from a regional perspective and a geographic perspective, and also a demographic perspective, when we put that front and center and think about how everybody can benefit. And when we also think about how Pittsburgh can create a model for all, that what we're doing here could actually think about creating new supply chain effects and new industry effects across the globe. And so I'm pretty proud to celebrate this opportunity and hear an annual report and celebrate the leadership of Ben Pratt as a region economic development officer who's been in this role. Rico. He's a Rico. I don't even know what his title is, but it's the most confusing title for a long organization. But I will say, bringing Ben back to Pittsburgh to help lead this and see it come to life has been a really rewarding experience. We've been at this just with him for about 6 months, and here's what it resulted in. So I appreciate all of you being here today. I think it's been a wonderful, and I also should call out my friend Robbie Matizak from Senator Casey's office, because Robbie, you were there at the beginning saying to us, make sure this is important, bring these partners together. How can we help? How can we help? And Senator Casey tirelessly made sure that we were successful and continue to stand with us. So thank you for your leadership. And with that, I encourage you to stay for conversation, food, drink. I know we've got a lot of great energy in this room to celebrate, and come back tomorrow to really see what robotics is doing in Pittsburgh and how we're thriving. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming and join me in a reception that is located downstairs. And we will have Wayfinder to help you find your way. Thank you all.